5 years ago, I sat down and wrote a number, $1 million by the age of 35. And back then, I was just 30 years old. And by publishing this goal on the channel, some of the comments were really brutal. Some people thought that I was delusional. Some people thought that I was showing off. A few said that the math just don't work out for someone in my position. So 5 years later, I turned 35 and I'm here to share with you the story, the pressures, the doubt, and the life costs that I have to absorb along the way, and what hitting the number really felt like. Because I think the story is just more important than the destination itself. So let's go back a few years ago. Why did I even set the goal when I was 30 years old in 2021 that I want to hit 1M USD by 35? So let's roll back the clock to more than 10 years ago when I was starting out as a fresh graduate. I graduated in 2015, that means I was 24 years old, and I was in an accounting role. So from 2015 to 2021, I worked for 6 years as a corporate accountant and even got my chartered accountant's license. And by 2021, I wanted to start a YouTube channel as a side hustle talking about money and personal finance and investing to help more Singaporeans achieve their wealth goals, not as a financial advisor, but from someone who has financial education and background. So using my very professional calculations and my spreadsheet skills honed all over my entire life of professional accounting, I did up a spreadsheet and do my projections and forecasts and realized that I could actually achieve 1M USD by 35. That was before all the AI calculator came out. And why 1 million USD is because of the very famous 4% withdrawal rule, where if I just withdrew 40,000 US dollars, and that means around 3,333 US dollars per month. Back then, at the exchange rate, it was around 4,500 Singapore dollars. I felt that it was enough for myself and my spending level. So it is a flaw for security, not for luxury. And I definitely acknowledge this. It's not going to be a very high-end lifestyle. It's just going to be a mediocre, maybe a little bit better than median. And I set the deadline to the age of 35 because I feel that's an important milestone to a working adult. That's where most people get around 10 years of work experience. And I wanted to be intentional about it, to show accountability. That is why I announced it on the channel itself. So along the way, after I announced this goal, which was quite radical during that point in time, since 2021, I think here are some very common critic comments like you have no kids, you're not married, you don't even own a house yet. All these big ticket purchases, you haven't even spent it and you're thinking of getting 1 million at 35 and going on semi-retirement, you must be crazy. Now, I want to be very clear that when I set that financial goal at that timeline, I've already put in all these assumptions. I have already planned out my wedding costs, my housing costs, and my renovation costs. All these are already part of the assumptions of the financial planning spreadsheet. And true enough, after all the years, I've gotten my keys to my BTO flat, which is a 4-room HDB, paid for the down payment with my CPF, and undergone a full home renovation series, even detailing out the cost without busting the budget and without any loan, full cash payment, plus held my wedding and got married in 2023. So all these were fully covered by cash with zero parent support. So by then, some people also say that probably because he has high income or he has some inheritance or has some lottery luck. I could just say that I had none of it. I didn't even have a high salary back in my corporate job. It was around the $5,000 mark when I last left the job in 2023. So I think that as for YouTube content creators, when they want to post all these numbers, it's not really to be arrogant about it. It's more about accountability. You share that this number and you want to hit this number, and if you don't hit it, then what are the consequences? That you are accountable to your goals. I think that was one motivation that kept me grounded and working towards that 1M by 35 goal. Now, I want to move the discussion to the second point, which is the career pivot that nobody really talks about. In January 2021, after I worked for 6 years in corporate accounting, I actually moved to a different role within the same company, which offered me more time flexibility compared to a corporate accountant, and that enabled me to have time to work on my YouTube channel. So I was very thankful of that opportunity, but it was also very difficult and challenging because on one hand, you're working on a full-time job. On the other hand, you're using up your nighttime and your weekends to really work on the YouTube channel as a side hustle, which brought in almost no money for the first year. But the good thing is there's still financial stability because you are still relying on the full-time salary compared to you are drawing zero income on YouTube, which may be quite unstable at times. So that was a deliberate career pivot that I made in the year of 2021. If I stayed in my accounting role, I probably would not even have the time because accountants are always overworked. But I want to move on to 2022, where the year was one of the most memorable ones because that was just 1 year after I set the goal, right? And everyone remember what happened in year 2022? We were in a bear market. The stock markets wiped out a significant portfolio value because of the inflation fears and increase in interest rates. And back then, my portfolio was mostly in US tech stocks, especially all the small growth companies that really didn't have any profits. It was just hype. But I did not sell my core portfolio, which is mainly the Max 7 stocks. I held on to it, embraced the downturn, and even held some of them till today. And meanwhile, I was starting to invest my CPF and SRS funds into their respective unit trusts offered by various platforms. Like I was using Endowers initially for CPF and SRS, then I moved on to Poems, and now I'm using Stashaway for SRS. But in 2022, it was really not fun. Every other day, when you open the stock brokerage app, it's always red. It's always seeing 4-figure losses and sometimes 5-figure losses, which was quite devastating because you imagine 1 whole month of salary is completely wiped out from you doing nothing. So your whole 1 month of employment, you really 做白工, you work so hard for 1 month and then all lost to the stock market. But well, I guess everyone had a phase. I still held it over that period and I'm glad it's over because 2023 was where the markets returned. And that was when my YouTube side hustle picked up as well. I decided to finally go full-time into YouTube from January 2023 onwards. So it's one of the scariest decisions of my life. I gave up my full-time salary, my stable employee benefits, my CPF, and whatever annual leave that an employee enjoys. And now I'm going to go full-time into a business that I don't really know if it can really make money over the long term, but I wanted to try out because what's the worst? I'll just go back to my old corporate job, right? It's better trying out and fail rather than not trying and regret after you are too old to try out new stuff. And let me be clear that quitting your job and trying to build a thing about financial independence is not about running away from that old job. It is building a life that you don't need to escape from. And I'm trying to build that through the YouTube business. Because even when I was earning lower on YouTube compared to the old corporate job, I could then scale it further with my additional time and additional resources so that it can really be a full-time lifestyle business. And by September 2023, 9 months after I started the company, my wife left her job to join on my venture as my employee. And it's only possible because we have built enough runway and enough emergency buffer for both of us to leave our previous corporate jobs and work on this business full-time. So if you think about it, the risk is even higher, right? 2 people who left their corporate jobs now working on the same business. It's just one single point of failure of the YouTube business. Then following on, I'm sure many of you have seen my Malaysia semi-retirement video. So I did really stay in Malaysia for 1 year with my wife's family. And it was a life experiment to really try out what is life like outside of Singapore and working remote. Not in JB, not in KL, not in Penang. Like in a more suburban area, can I really accept it from a Singaporean point of view? And because I was still waiting for my BTO back then, I think it was a very good time to try it out. So the truth is that the lifestyle costs will decrease greatly because of the strengthening of the Singapore currency against Malaysian ringgit, plus the lower cost of living. But the fact is, we also earn less income because we were less motivated to chase for financial gains as everyone is so relaxed in the environment. So it's good for retirement, it's good for living, not really good for business and income. So 1 year later, in August 2024, I finally got my HDB BTO keys and we started the renovation series and we can finally move in to our new HDB flat. And renovation content is really very popular, right? Because I think everyone is trying to save money in this high cost environment. And I've been very transparent of my cost and what I did to my very humble 4-room BTO flat. Nothing fancy, nothing luxurious, just something that I feel that every Singaporean household could learn from instead of just looking at all the fancy homes with 6-figure renovation budgets. I think to be more realistic, this is what I came in as a finance creator point of view and to show what you can really do to maximize your budget with a limited set of costs. So yes, we really covered the full renovation cost using cash buffer and not even selling away the portfolio. There was cash set aside for it. So it's very important to plan for your own finances. And it's a very surreal feeling once you move into your new home because you can finally have your personal private space away from your original families, away from your parents, when you really start to make adult decisions. So that was one of the best moments in life. So coming back to some of my financial journey milestones, in 2024, I crossed Singapore dollars $1 million and made a video on it. 1 year later, in 2025, I made a video on the update that I finally reached that $1 million by the age of 34, not 35. So for those of you who are new here, what made up that $1 million portfolio was mainly my equity funds, which is majority in broad-based diversified index funds. So I tend not to pick stocks, although they form a small part of the portfolio. And my CPF has been compounding ever since my first work contribution, plus I had some voluntary top-ups along the way and even hit the FRS like 5 years ago in 2021. Plus, after I started the YouTube business, the income and earnings start to grow rapidly because we were in the bullish phase of the YouTube content creator journey. Of course, nothing lasts forever, and I don't expect this income to grow astronomically forever. There is always a phase that this will die down, and I fully acknowledge that will happen. There's nothing related to HDB appreciation because we are still under the minimum occupation period of 5 years, and I don't consider my own stay property as part of the net assets or net wealth. So what does hitting the number of $1 million at age 34, which is 1 year ahead of my 35 goal, really felt like? To be honest, there's nothing dramatic, nothing celebratory, and nothing really goes along my head. It is more of a relief that, oh, I'm glad it worked, and the math worked out well, and I even surpassed my own projections and expectations. So it's like a good report card, but nothing of the feeling that it is finally the end or this is the destination, because I guess we always have higher goals to work towards too. Is $1 million really enough, especially for someone at age 34? I guess you have to do your own calculations because everyone's expenses and their commitments are different. But I want to address the question on FIRE versus Ikigai. What is the real difference? If you talk about FIRE, financial independence, retire early, is really about not doing much stuff, like you keep it work optional. Some people achieve that financial independence status and really just prefer to not work. Just, relax, enjoy life, enjoy whatever they didn't have the opportunity to do when they were still employed or full-time running the business. But Ikigai is kind of different. It's more finding out what you really like to do, what can make you money, what the world needs, and what you're good at. But I guess along the journey of discovering your FIRE, you will come to this phase of should you even stop because you enjoy this thing so much. And if you stop creating what you like, stop doing what you like, would that really give you the enjoyment? And if stopping what you do creates more misery than bringing happiness, then why stop? So the goal was never to stop, but to continue doing things that I really love and can do consistently for the long term. So if you're in a bad situation, like your career is not going anywhere, your job environment sucks, I think it's more important to find an environment or a job that you really enjoy doing such that you don't hate it rather than trying to escape from it. Now, let me be very honest, $1 million was just my number 5 years ago. And I can confirm that this number would sound very different to different individuals depending on their life circumstances, their commitments, their family, and whatever they are going through in their personal situation. And it may be enough to some people, while it may be too extravagant to some others. Maybe you haven't even figured out your number yet, but I want to tell you one thing. The goal was never the priority. It was more about the journey, the systems that you built to help you reach this goal, what you can continue doing even after reaching your goal. A lifestyle that doesn't inflate with your additional income and work that you can choose to do, even if you don't have to. And the costs that people mentioned in the past comments, the wedding, the renovation, the housing, were all real. But I have already set aside the cash buffer to overcome it. And you need to add that in your projections if you are going through this expensive life stages or big ticket items. So your version will look very different from mine because everyone has different starting points, different privileges, and different liabilities along in life. Most importantly, what really built the wealth was to be active in my active income on pursuing my full-time YouTube business and be passive in my passive income, which is trying to grow my investment portfolio. And since you watched till the end, and if you really like this video, I would really appreciate it if you click on my interactive brokers link or scan the IBKR QR code here. This is the broker that I mainly use because of the low fees and favorable exchange rates. And you don't even need to sign up, you just have to click. So for every click, I'll receive a small commission. So thank you to all those who have clicked and support this video. So if you're on your financial independence journey as well, you don't even have a number. Nowadays, you can do it through AI to calculate for you based on your spending, your commitment, and your lifestyle situation. So I think it's not too hard. I think what is more important is that you need to have the intention. You need to start and be accountable on your own life goals. And I know that it will feel very unrealistic to have that number, and there will be people along the way trying to shoot you down because of tall poppy syndrome or crab mentality. But I can assure you, as long as you stay aligned and committed to your goals, you will succeed one day. It's just a matter of time. So if you really enjoyed this video on my financial independence journey, I would really encourage you to watch this related video that I've done in a previous topic like this as well. See you there.